YouTube, you wanted the best. You got the best. The hottest YouTuber in the land, Phil McCracken.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think I have an applause thing around here somewhere. Where is it? Never mind.
I got to show this out there real quick. If you guys watch the intro and you see the part of the clip, and you see the little guy trying to turn the little thing to lift up the cage and let the Kraken out, that's cash money. I have to have him employed, so that's his job. So,
I never thought of that.
That's cash money. But I couldn't afford clothes, so we got him a scampy little robe. I guess you can call it a toga. There you go.
Works for me. So, the end is here. We are finally wrapping up our talk of KISS, and I gotta say, I have really enjoyed it. And I'm gonna say this. I'll say this again at the end, but I'll go ahead and say it now. For me, as someone who went into this knowing of KISS, but not really getting into their music, I really took for granted just kind of how good they were as musicians, no matter which lineup it was.
That's true. The stage performance, the visuals, kind of take the musician. We would say the ability to play. It subtracts from it. I would even say, even when the band doesn't have makeup on, it still distracts. It's a plus and a minus to things, but you can't deny there has been some great musicians that were in KISS and part of KISS. Eric Carr, for example, my opinion. If not a top 10 drummer, I don't know. I definitely say he's top 10. Ace Frehley, I mean, what can you say? I think now that you went into KISS, your question about Ace Frehley being similar to Slash, which is more Slash inspired by Ace Frehley. But Ace Frehley's style is, he's not an Eddie Van Halen, but then again, Eddie Van Halen isn't an Ace Frehley.
Exactly.
Would you say that he's up there with Richie Blackmore?
Not quite, but he's still important.
But he has something, not only a good guitar playing, but the ability, though he was at first wouldn't do it, has the ability that he can put some voice to some of his songs. And let's give props to that. The one thing I would give credit to KISS, as opposed to other bands, most besides Vinnie Vincent, though there is some demos of him singing, never sung in KISS. Mark St. John never sung in KISS, and there's nothing of him singing out there. But the rest of the members of KISS could sing. Yeah. And you have to give them props. I don't care what version of Metallica you have. Metallica can't put 4 solo albums and sell 1 million copies. KISS did that. The only band that I can think of that can do that is the Beatles,
which Gene has multiple times mentioned as an early inspiration for KISS.
But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, think about it. If Paul Stanley was just the sole singer of KISS, his voice wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. You know, when he goes into a concert and they're singing 20 songs, he's doing 10. All right. Then Gene's doing a large chunk, and then now Eric sings a song or two, and even Tommy Thayer can sing a song or two. He has done it and does do it, so I'll give him props.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, that like I said, the musicianship, are they the greatest in the world? No. Are they decent? Yes. Maybe in some cases, certain members a little better than decent.
Oh
But
yeah.
but no matter which version of the band you get, you know, at least an original band, four members, uh, non makeup, you had definitely three. Even though we'll talk about Bruce Kulick singing a song before he unfortunately gets pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
And the current band, all four members have and do sing. Uh, so give them the props they deserve. And let's be honest, Kiss as a band has been doing it for 50 years plus. Yeah, well, this is
Mm-hmm.
50, and it'll end at 50 if it hits when it hits December. Uh, how many bands can you name last that long? You
It's
know,
very few.
very few. And yeah, they had a lot of lineup changes, but if a band's around that long, you're going to have lineup changes. So, good or for ill. But let's go ahead and talk about our first album up for
Yep.
this set of
Which is this one.
You Wanted the Best. I remember when this first came out, uh, back in the day. What was that video store that everybody used to? Blockbuster.
Uh, yeah,
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
For some reason, Blockbuster had a special, and Best Buy had a special. At this time, your record stores, Sam Goody and other ones, have started to fade out. All right. You can blame it on the internet, but unfortunately, records stopped selling.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, I blame the record companies when you're charging $16 to $17, and this is back in the mid 90s for a CD that really only cost them $1, and even to put the stuff on it, maybe three. They were overkilling their people. But yeah, they had special deals. You go on Blockbuster, I think you got a poster.
Mm-hmm.
Best Buy, I think, gave you one extra track that was on the Japanese version, but you could have got it. If you ordered it quick enough through Best Buy, you would have got the Japanese version with the extra track. And for people who don't know, Japan has a pretty much a hidden rule that any music that was coming from other countries into Japan, they wanted something special. So Japan tends to get an extra track, just something to make it different. And record companies didn't mind doing that because then people in the United States not only wanted the original that was released in the United States, but give me that Japanese version that has an extra song. You uh, Sometimes you have to look when you look at an album. I don't care what band it is. Sometimes the overseas version, like the British version, might be different than the American version, and the American version might be different than the South American version. Definitely different than the Japanese or the Australian version. So, but this is one of the cases. Kiss was, you know, taking you don't want to say taking advantage of the situation, but yeah, it had an extra song that wasn't on the American version, and that is New York Roof with Eric Carr. It was a live
Which,
performance, I believe, from Australia.
which I gotta
Uh,
say this about that song. I I don't think I told you this actually in DMs, Phil, but I did go ahead and buy the Ace Frehley solo album off iTunes and listen to the studio version that he does on that of New York Groove, and that live track with Eric Carr 10 times better just by Eric Carr's drumming.
and that's something to say because the guy that's drumming on Ace's solo album ends up drumming for most of the songs on Dynasty and Unmasked, and that's Anton Fig. So that tells
Yeah,
you
and
how good of a
Anton Figs
drummer.
is a great drummer. He's
Yep.
I said
But
before, he's currently the drummer for Joe Bonamassa.
yeah, the current thing about New York Groove from Ace's album, Ace really didn't want to do it because he wanted to just do songs he'd written, and that is a Russ Ballard. A lot of people don't know who he is. He's a guy that writes a lot of songs, and that originally was recorded by, I think, Urgent. Uh, had a little hit, but when Ace got a hold of it, it became a super hit. That became, big. You see it on his solo album when they do the Dynasty tour and the Unmasked tour. New York Groove's a big part of it. And when he comes back in the Kiss, New York Groove is put in through the live show. So that just tells you how big a song that song was, and that version live with Eric Carr, it's an awesome song. You know.
It is. Now, real
So,
quick, just kind of on a side tangent, you sent me a clip involving New York Groove. Can I just play a little bit of it from it's a deleted scene from Infinity War for those watching. Do you mind if I play just a bit of it?
yeah, well, there's no song, so we should get. We won't. I don't think get any copyright strike or taken down by YouTube. So, uh,
Yeah.
you can play that clip, but I hopefully we don't get striked by Disney.
Yeah, Disney, please don't hurt me. I'm trying to visit you in a year.
To the same song again and again and again. I told you. I'm screwed up, man. I gotta get back in the groove. Specifically the New York groove. Give me my zoom. No. Give me the zoom. Give it. The man who sings a song is a degenerate. I will not sit here and allow you to malign Ace Frehley.
That's the only relevant parts, but still.
But that is hilarious. And you notice the only member of Kiss brought up, and you know why they bring it up, because Guardians of the Galaxy played a lot of music from the 70s. That was his thing. And surprise, surprise, New York Groove with Ace Frehley. It isn't a Kiss song. Well, it is a Kiss song, but technically Ace Frehley. But it isn't a song off, it isn't Rock and Roll All Night, God of Thunder. It isn't none of them. It's off Ace's solo album.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm sure if they wanted to use a legit Kiss song off an actual Kiss album that had all four of the members, they would have. I mean, it's Disney; they probably could have afforded it, but they would have had to pay way more royalties than just to Ace.
Well, see, that's the thing. Since it's a Kiss solo album, technically is under the Kiss banner, so they still would have to pay Kiss. Even though that's technically a solo album, it's not really a solo album. It's a Kiss Ace Frehley album. So, yeah. Got to remember, Kiss is smart in a lot of ways, and that's one way is they were smart. So,
yes.
But yeah, I remember buying this album. I got the American release and I have the Japanese release. So not much difference, but remember, Japan has one extra track. So that's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But good album. But again, this is the start of, in the 90s, of Kiss overloading the market with different forms of greatest hits albums. And you really don't need, they did like, I think 6 or 7, and you really don't need 6 or 7 greatest hits albums.
Yeah.
That's
like
too much.
In the past, and this is something you and I have talked about offline, we talked about all of those, like smashes, trashes, and hits and killers and all that, because they each had some form of original track to them.
Or even like Double Platinum, their first attempt of
Yeah, that had Strutter 78.
Yeah, there was something different. This really, besides that New York Groove live release, there's nothing new. There's not like, oh, here's a new song we're going to put in there. I think this album is good. If you don't have Double Platinum or Killers or Smashes or Trashes, then okay, get this album.
It's also worth mentioning, though, and this is probably one thing that this particular album, You Wanted the Best, has in favor of it that the other ones don't. The other greatest hits albums that we had talked about before were all studio tracks. These are all live tracks. So if you
Yeah.
wanted like a greatest hits but live, then yeah, go for this album.
If I'm correct, there's a couple songs that didn't get put on a lot, like a live or live two, that made it on this. So we finally got these songs. Like I heard, the big thing was Alive 2 didn't put previous of the first three, and the reason why was it was already on Alive. So they're figuring why put Rock and Roll Night on Alive 2 when you already had the live version on Alive 1. So,
Right.
and you have to remember both Alive and Alive 2 are, it isn't a concert. They're a collection of 3 concerts on Alive, and I think 3 different concerts on Alive 2. So they're cherry picking what sounded the best to put on that album, and then they touched it up. Well, here are some songs that are on You Wanted the Best. I'm going to go look up and see if I can the track listing, if I can see what is. Okay, Take Me Live. I believe that was a later release. That wasn't recorded for Alive 2. Didn't make it. Rock Bottom was already there. Let Me Know was already on there. Yeah, a lot of these songs that they have, uh, you know, Take Me. I really like it. I really love that song, even the studio track. So, yeah, I'm glad that they put that out. But what really made this album again for me was New York Groove live with Eric Carr. You know, so but a good album. It did well. It got
Yeah.
gold. Uh, you're seeing a
And
trend there. The platinum isn't there no more, and this is again there after about 92, 93. People are not buying albums. They're more inclined to download the one was Napster and LimeWire. Why pay for it
mhm,
when you can get it for free? Or what a lot of people did was I buy the CD, boom, I'll burn you a copy, boom, you got the copy. And it's
yep.
just as good as the original. So, but this is still, it got gold. So it still did well. So,
Yes. So the next album after that was actually one that got shelved in the immediate aftermath of Kiss Unplugged and how successful that was due to the original 4 reuniting at the end, and that's Carnival of Souls.
yeah.
So this is the
Uh,
final album with the lineup of Paul, Gene, Bruce Kulick, and Eric Singer.
Yep. This was originally done and was supposed to be released in 95, 96. They didn't. Fans knew about it, but, from the KISS department, you didn't hear anything. And then LimeWire, Napster, got a hold of some of these songs, and then they were getting the bootleg. So one of the reasons why this album did see the light of day, Kiss's attempt to nix the bootlegging by actually releasing the album.
Yes.
Uh,
And the best way to describe this album is it's Kiss trying and in my opinion failing at doing grunge.
yep. And you have to remember Kiss is known for whatever's popular at the time. Let's do
Mhm.
it. Dynasty disco was popular, so let's do some disco. Uh,
Unmasked was pop.
Pop, and you got Crazy Nights with an attempt to be with keyboards. And you can even throw Smashes to Trash as the 2 new tracks also in
Hmm.
that because it was keyboard heavy.
Yeah, and if I'm
Uh,
not mistaken, albums like Hot in the Shade and Revenge, that was Kiss doing power pop ballads.
Yeah, but Kiss has always been that's been their thing. They're you have to remember in the '90s, it's get your stuff on MTV, and if you got your stuff on MTV, 90% of the time it's a ballad. Okay,
Hmm.
MTV was big from the '80s all the way into the early, I say '92, '93. And Dial MTV, like I said, that was people, most of the time young people coming home from school. They knew they had 4 hours after they get home to hurry up and dial MTV, which was free. You dial it, you put in what song you liked or video at the time you liked, and at 7 o'clock they do a top 20. Now this top 20 doesn't reflect the actual top 20 charts. These are if you were number one, you were number one because more of your fans put you at number one, not what was actually going on the charts. Okay. And I'll be honest, most of the time, I don't care if it was back in '84, Heaven's on Fire, you go with Tears Are Falling from Asylum, Reason to Live, uh, you go into Hot in the Shade and you do Forever. Them things were on MTV when they were released. They were up there for weeks, and they were like, you know, think about this. They were going up against Motley Crue and winning. Now the record sales weren't comparing to Motley Crue; they were outselling them. But yeah, when it came to dialing MTV, Kiss was always, very rarely were they losing. You know, uh, and that proved a point to a lot of people. How you determine what's your top 20 videos on a countdown from the charts. Yet why is Kiss winning in the dialing department and always ending up number one or number two? It didn't equal out. Kiss fans are always amazed by that. Here we are putting them number one and number two, and you think by more popularity that should equal album sales and chart standings, yet the charts weren't getting recognized. You know?
That is strange.
Yep. I think their best charted song released uh, after the original band broke up is Forever. And as great as Forever was, it went gold as a single. The album itself only went gold, but it didn't equal out to what was popular at the time. You would think with that song, okay, that's going to make it a platinum album. Didn't happen. Should have happened, but it
Yeah, it should
didn't.
have.
So, yeah, I'm sorry if I took us off track, but that had to be explained.
No, you're good. You're
So,
good.
but Carnival of Souls uh, is again Kiss at that time trying to run the trend of grunge, and let's be honest, Kiss sounding angry, depressed, and everything isn't Kiss.
No,
Kiss is
Kiss is a party
typical
band.
party band, feel good song, an anthem themed song, or let's be honest, boy girl type thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but angry, depressed song didn't get it, even though the single Jungle did quite well and is quite popular. This album, even though it is 10 times better than The Elder, did not chart, did not do well.
And of
And
course,
again,
because when this album released,
yeah,
the original lineup was
there you
doing their
go.
reunion tour.
And
They didn't tour on
and
it.
they didn't tour for this album. There's no video for the album. So as good as it did, you know, ha- had it been released before the reunion, I think it probably would have been close to gold, maybe not gold, because a lot of Kiss fans would shook their heads at it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I kind of like it because I like the Bruce Kulick song, "I Walk
It is.
Alone."
That's probably the best song on the album, in my
And
opinion.
sadly, just like Eric Carr, when you finally get a song on your album, on a Kiss album, lo and behold, something comes up, and that's your swan song. So,
But
yeah,
for me, and I told you this in DMs, they were. It's clear they were trying to do grunge, but they unintentionally on some of those songs went like full out heaven and hell style doom metal. Like
I
I
think
told you, it reminded me musically a
I don't
lot
think
of
they
Heaven
were.
and Hell's the Devil You Know.
I don't think they were trying to do Nirvana, but I do think they were trying to do the band that sung Outshine. Um,
Which I don't
I
know who that is.
I'll think about it. Give me a second. I'll get the name of it.
But yeah, down tuned
Soundgarden.
guitars,
Soundgarden. And if you don't
Soundgarden.
know who
Chris,
Soundgarden is, then you need to go get your head examined.
I know they have Chris Cornell.
Yep. Well, Outshined is an awesome song, almost kind of Black Sabbath style. But you had
Uh
to
huh.
remember when Kiss was attempting to put this album and make this album and would have released this album, it would have been out there where, you know, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. So this would have kind of fit in there.
It
But
would have.
but you have to remember, grunge didn't last long. It came
Yeah.
out in like about 90ish, and
Hmm.
it lasted to like about 94, 95, and then it was already gone as quick as it came. You know?
Because the arguably the inventor of grunge, Kurt Cobain, did what he did and departed from the mortal world.
Well, like I said, if they I just think, and this has always been Kiss, like I said, they were riding the waves of what was going on, and they figured, okay, grunge is popular, let's do grunge.
Hmm.
And like I said, had this been released 2 years before when they had it and it was done, uh, yeah, I think it would have probably been okay. They would
Now
have
let
done
me ask
it.
you this: two questions. Number one, if Eric Carr had not passed away and they were going to do this album, how do you think it would have turned out if Eric Carr was still playing on it?
Well, let's just say there was no uh unplug, or it was unplugged, but with Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick, and Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, nobody else. And they were going into this after Revenge. I do not think Eric Carr would have been too happy them going on a fad, because he already had experienced the back end of the fad. Even though he wasn't there for Dynasty, he kind of caught the flack from that, and
Yeah,
Kiss fandom kind of suffered for that. So I think he would have said, "Look, we're rock and roll. We're not grunge. Let's not be what we're not, and stick to what we built on Revenge." You know.
but he tried that once before with the Elder, and
Mm.
he got ignored,
Well,
and the
you
Elder
have to
was what it
again. You have to
was.
remember the situation in Kiss after Ace and Peter left. Uh, it's Gene and Paul's band.
Hmm.
Any other people coming in, even with Ace and Peter coming back, they don't have control, no voting rights. They're hired hands. The people that controls the everyday decisions is Gene and Paul.
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, but I do think if Eric Carr had lived and he was still in Kiss, I still would tell you, just like we talked on the Eric Carr stream, I don't think Eric Carr would have been in Kiss after uh 91, 92. I really have a hard time seeing him and Paul. I think Paul has so much control that even if Gene Simmons liked Eric Carr, if Paul says we're replacing him with Eric Singer, Gene's going to follow him.
Yeah,
So,
and then my other question is well, kind of a two-part question here. Is it just me, or did Eric Singer's drumming seem ever so slightly subdued here? And I wonder if that's because he was still fresh in the band, having just replaced someone who passed away, and getting over that.
I think, well, you have to remember the one thing is if there is a similarity, they both play double bass drums. Eric Singer is a good drummer and a good singer. Is he better than Eric Carr? In my personal opinion, no.
Agreed.
But I don't think if he had an issue, I don't see Eric Singer agreeing to grunge. I think he was personally happy with Revenge, and I think he would have probably been the person if he had to say. Like I said, I don't know, never said one way or the other. Uh, I think he would have said, "Let's not do the grunge." But then again, like I said, you're a hired hand. If they say red and you say white, there it's going to be red. So,
Hmm.
but like I said, I'm glad it was released and Kiss fans were able to buy it. But that's an album for really diehard Kiss fans to say we own it, we got it, great. Personally, for me, I can listen to it. I don't have a problem with it. Uh, but
I give it
unfortunately, the release time when it was released, it was an album that was, even though it was like 2 or 3 years removed from grunge, it didn't sound right for the time, and people were already done with grunge.
yeah.
Yeah.
I I give this album for what it is. I was not looking forward to getting into grunge Kiss, and I was surprised at how little I actually hated it. And so I give it overall a 6.5 out of 10. And as I said before, the song Bruce Kulick sings, I think that is hands down the best song on the
Agreed.
album.
I would agree.
So with that, let's move on now to the first album to quote unquote feature all four original members since Dynasty,
Actually,
Psycho Circus.
let's correct. We have major corrections to do here. On paper, Dynasty is the last of the original Kiss on paper.
Hmm.
Even though you could also say on paper Unmasked. All right, Unmasked. Peter Chris had nothing to do with Unmasked. He didn't play anything on Unmasked. The only thing he did was the video for the song Shandy. That's it.
Which if I'm not mistaken, that again on the record was Anton Fig, correct?
Yep, yep. And Dynasty, Peter Chris only does one song, and that is his own track, Dirty Living. So if you want to say the last official Kiss album with all four original members actually doing the album, it's Love
Of
Gun.
Gun. Yes.
Yep.
But
And
here's the thing. This album, Psycho Circus, still isn't
Smoking,
like Love Gun because they're still doing ghost musicians.
well, that's the thing. On Love Gun, that there's no ghost musicians. On on Psycho Circus, Smoke and Mirrors. Okay.
Yes.
Originally, you think of it and you look on there, you're like, oh, this is Kiss. We're getting the original band together. Now, you can say Ace and Peter were not up to par. You can say whatever you want. The official thing is Gene and Paul paid Ace and Peter 800,000 for them to keep their mouth quiet, and Kiss brought in on some songs, not every single one, session musicians. On Psycho Circus, the only album song that has all four members playing is the Ace Frehley song "Into the Void." Now, Ace does play on some of the other songs.
I know for a fact he plays on You Wanted the Best, which is the only song in all of Kiss, period, that I know of where all four of the original members are singing.
Yeah. There is uh when it comes to Peter Chris, the only other song he participates on is his own song that he sings that Paul wrote
Mhm.
for him, but that's not him playing on air. That's just him singing. Ace
Yeah.
plays on another track that wasn't released in the United States. It was a Japanese release. It's called "In Your Face." Gene wrote it, but Ace
Yeah.
sings it and plays it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the rest of the album, the drummer is, uh, I think his name is Keith Valentine. Uh, he plays drums. The guitar work is Tommy Thayer and a little bit of Bruce Kulick. Bass is sometimes Bruce Kulick. So you don't even get Gene playing a lot. So this album is equivalent to Creatures of the Night. It's a hodgepodge.
Yeah,
Uh,
which I I like the end result, but I
mhm.
don't agree with the process of
Yeah.
making it that way.
I think, and again, Kiss fans were happy. Again, this is smoke and mirrors. What you know now, you didn't know in 1998 when this came out. So, yeah, I can tell you as a Kiss fan in 1998, I was like all excited. This was the original band back together with an album. Uh, Years later, you find out not the case. Uh, be that as it may, it did go gold.
Hmm.
This will be the last studio album that Kiss does for a long time, and the last studio album to achieve gold.
Yeah.
So overall, I would have been a much happier uh, had this been. I think once you get the original band and you have the ability to have the original band, the producer that should have been on this album should have been Eddie Kramer. That should have been the producer. I
And who was
really
that
don't.
again?
I'm not a fan of Bob Ezrin. I know he's 2 for 3 with Kiss with their albums, but I think Eddie Kramer's albums with Kiss are 1,000 times better. I think he understands Kiss the best. Uh,
Remind me, who is which albums did he do initially?
he did all the live albums, and
Hmm.
he did Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun, and he did
Okay.
Ace's solo album.
All right. Yeah,
And he's a
I
known producer for he done a lot of famous people before Kiss. He done I think Jimi Hendrix, uh Janis Joplin, I think, and a couple of other people. So that's not a knock on Bob Ezrin, but Bob Ezrin is the one that originally started Kiss with let's bring somebody else in if this person can't play this part, rather than make the person play to the best of their ability. Let's sub somebody in, and I totally dislike it. That's
yeah,
why when you listen to a Kiss album before Destroyer, not saying Destroyer's bad, I like Destroyer, but you can tell the Ace version that was finally released
which I
of
did buy.
Sweet Pain is to me 1,000 times better than what the guy that they had play on the original album.
Hmm.
So
So for me with this album, I do really like this album. However, the highest that I can give it is a 9 out of 10 because like I said, I do like it, but I had to actively pretend, okay, this is the original band in the studio.
yeah.
On some tracks it was easier to do than others, but the highest I can go on this one is a 9 out of 10.
Let's say this: the songs aren't the issue. The issue is you have the original band. Let's let's play the original band, regardless of the ability of this one. I don't care.
Hmm.
And it's kind of funny now. The last 2 studio albums, that's what they did.
Hmm.
But they couldn't do that with the original band. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
No,
I
it
don't care
doesn't.
how they're getting along, not getting along. Uh, that's irrelevant. If you can sit there on Sonic Boom and Monster and Tommy Thayer's playing all his parts, good or bad, you could have had Ace, good or bad, playing on Psycho Circus, the entire album. Same thing for the
Agreed.
drumming. Peter Criss could have done it. I don't care if you're saying he's not as great as whoever they got, but you sink and swim with Eric Singer. You could have sink and swim with Peter Criss. You know,
Mhm. And
I
as
think
far as
later on, not then, it did go gold, but I think later on, the ability 5 or 10, 20 years later, it pays a price knowing now the ability of a person that's a diehard Kiss fan that never bought Psycho Circus would say, well, it's not the original band, so why should I buy it?
agreed.
See, where had it been the original band, some albums sometimes take you years later. Creatures of the Night, 82, it didn't go gold until 90, 8 years later.
Hmm.
So you don't know. Maybe 20 years later, it could have got platinum status. You know, but in today's world, platinum. I mean, the ability to sell records have fallen off. Greatly declined. So,
Yes.
but this album is a good album overall. Definitely to have. So even if you're not a diehard Kiss fan, I would say get this album if you want to have something of that time of that era. So
Hmm.
yeah, uh,
And as far as the best track for this one, I'd say for me it's a tie between the title track Psycho Circus and Into the Actually no, it's a three-way tie between Psycho Circus, Into the Void, and You Wanted the Best.
okay.
And
Now,
and just
now
as
we
a
should
side note, I know we're going to talk about it here in a moment, but why they didn't include a live version of You Wanted the Best on Millennium, that is a crime.
thinking. A lot of times the band itself might have a say, but it's more the record label. Uh, but I will want to talk about 3 tracks that aren't on the Kiss album. The one
Uh-huh.
I talked about, the Japanese release one with "In Your Face" with Ace Frehley. That is a good
Yes,
track.
it
Uh,
is.
an unreleased track that for some reason never makes it on a Kiss album, but "It's My Life," which has Ace, Paul, and Gene singing, not Peter. Uh, Great. That version's a great version, though I love
Hold up,
the
hold up, hold
Creatures
up.
Night.
You didn't send me a link to It's
You
My
good luck
Life.
trying to find it, but sometimes it gets taken down on YouTube.
I'm gonna look
I
on
gave you the
YouTube for
one
now.
from Creatures of the Night when it's only Gene singing. But
Hmm.
there's one that it's off what they call it the box set, which I again has a bunch of demos and a bunch of tracks. Uh, Going into detail with the box set, you'll be here forever. But
Right.
yep, and the other song that kind of comes off of this album that ends up on the movie of Detroit Rock City, "Nothing Can Keep Me From You." Okay song, but too much reminiscent of Aerosmith, the one from what was that movie? The Bruce Willis one.
I found it, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
sending it to you in DMs. But the I don't know what version you're talking about.
Okay, it's my life. That might be the original version where it's not the. That might be the Creature Night version, not the Psycho Circus version. Psycho Circus version has Ace and Paul and Gene all singing on it. The Creatures of the Night version is only Gene singing.
Okay. Hmm. Well, anyways, um, yeah, Psycho Circus. It's just a shame that it was more smoke and mirrors and not them utilizing the full original band. But anyways, on to the next album. We actually have two back-to-back live albums, and I think this is going to be an interesting debate that we're going to have, Phil, as far as which one of these two albums we prefer. First up is a live 4 with a symphony, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring the other one up too. Live Millennium. Now, chronologically, if I'm not mistaken, Millennium happened first because this was the original 4 members during their quote-unquote goodbye tour.
It was supposed to be the farewell tour.
Mm-hmm.
And that got pushed. That live album, that was supposed to be a live 4.
Yeah.
That got shelved. So they made a live 4, the Sympathy.
Yeah.
The Millennium was released in a box set where you got Kiss Alive 2, Kiss Alive 3, Sympathy, and the Millennium was in there. You got all 5 Alive albums. But
Yes.
technically, you're right. The Millennium was supposed to be before the Sympathy. But here's the little heads up. After the farewell tour, the original farewell tour, there was a problem with the Australian and the Japanese part of the tour. Peter Criss's contract didn't get renewed, and what they were offering him wasn't up to par for him. And I can understand it 100%, but you later find out they really did him evil.
Yeah, they
So
basically were going to offer him, what, pennies?
Peter Criss didn't do the farewell part in Australia and New Zealand. So they put Eric Singer. Now, everybody was speculating would he get his own makeup or whatever. And then come to find out, Eric Singer was going to be put in the cat makeup. So they did the Australian and the Japanese tour. Then it ended with I believe it was the 2002 Salt Lake City Summer Olympics, where Kiss performed one song, and that was it. So Kiss decides we're not done. We're going to do an Aerosmith tour, co-headlining. Okay, so here's where the controversy starts. So Aerosmith said up front, we will not tour with you unless you have at least three original members. So originally, Kiss goes to Ace Frehley. And Ace Frehley said, look, that was the farewell tour. That was supposed to be it. I'm done.
Plus something about how these guys opened for
us.
So
and then the conversation turns, well, what's up with this co-headlining tour? There'll be a headlining act. Then, according to the deal, will be Kiss. And then it would be Aerosmith. And Ace Frehley's like, no. No. I am not opening up for a band that opened up for us. That's a disgrace. So Gene Simmons said, okay, well, bye. So what they then did was make a deal with Peter Criss. So Peter Criss became the third member. But before they agreed to put Tommy Thayer in there in Ace's makeup, they had thought because Peter Criss had come back, that would have drawn Ace to come back, which Ace stuck to his guns. Now,
and good on him for that.
Now, the dirt is Peter Criss was only going to get 10,000, I believe, a show, which is way down from what he was getting 50,000 on the reunion tour. That means every show they did live, he got paid about 50,000. Well, for this tour, he was only getting 10. He was demanding at first 30, but he agreed to go down to 10.
Which that's not just a slap in the face. That's a kick to the balls.
It gets worse. Then he come to find out halfway through the tour that Tommy Thayer was getting 30,000 and he was only getting 10. Now, Kiss never argued against that in any comments or anything about that. So that was dirty. That was really dirty. So this is why you get this lineup with Peter Criss, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Tommy Thayer. Well, when they went to uh, Australia, you got to remember Peter Criss didn't have a goodbye tour for Australia. So Peter Criss was definitely also looking to go to the places that he didn't get to go on the farewell tour, Australia and Japan. So he ends up doing that, but unfortunately, it's with Tommy Thayer on the guitar. So part of the thing was Japan and no, excuse me, Australia. They were going to do this sympathy concert with the Australian Symphony Orchestra. Now here's where it gets a little confusing. When he agreed to the 10,000 a night paycheck, he supposedly agreed that he was going to get a cut of the sympathy record. Come to find out, he was lied to. He wasn't getting a cut. Okay, so there's another part of the deal that it got taken away from him. Be that as it may, they do this tour, and after the tour, they just didn't renew his contract. They just didn't. And quote unquote, the reason was Paul Stanley calls Peter Criss and he says, look, we're looking to go with the new KISS. And Peter Criss goes, what do you mean by new KISS? Well, we're going to keep going as KISS, but you know, we're not going to renew your contract. You're getting too old. Mind you, he's only a couple of years older than Gene Simmons. You're complaining about the smoke and, you know, arms hurt, legs hurt, you know. Again, remember at this time he's in his late 60s, early 70s. So, yeah. And it's time to move on. Now, there's a key word there. You know, when you hear about someone saying things and you're like, someone has a saying, time to move on. Supposedly, these were the very words that Eric Carr's girlfriend heard when Paul Stanley called to fire Eric Carr, told him, look, Eric, it's time to move on. Ironic.
Wow.
That is the same words that come out of his mouth with Peter Criss. So you can't say when you have, if it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, it's a duck. So there's a lot of die-hard KISS fans that will defend KISS to the end. There's no way you can deny it. You can say that this isn't proof, but hey, you can go on YouTube. There's plenty of interviews with Carrie Stevens where she says what Paul Stanley said to Eric, and you can go listen to. There's an audio book or broken up parts on YouTube with Peter Criss's book, and it says the same thing. When you say it to one, you tend to say it to other people. And to say it's time to move on, that was the words he gave Eric Carr, and that was the words he gave to Peter Criss when he told him he wasn't renewing this contract.
The words that arguably killed Eric Carr.
Okay. And we're going to put this now to end this. Ace Frehley never got fired by KISS, even though they tried to say. He quit in 82. And he quit in 2003, not the other way around. Peter Criss did get fired the first time, but the second time, that was Peter Criss holding out for a contract and didn't bend. Unfortunately, he missed out. And the third time, he didn't quit, and he wasn't fired. KISS didn't renew his contract. We're not renewing the contract isn't being fired. It's just saying we're moving on. So Peter got fired one time. Ace really never got fired. He quit. So, yeah, unfortunately, for a lot of original KISS fans, this ending is the end for the original band. Even from that point till now, a lot of things have been said. I'm a diehard Kiss fan. I like all the versions of Kiss. I even like the current version, though I disagree with the makeup part. But I will say this: I hope, even though Kiss is coming to an end in December, I do not want to see Ace and Peter involved whatsoever. They, Paul and Gene have talked bad. They have put them two down. There's no reason for them to show up there because if they do show up, it's more about Gene and Paul trying to get more ticket sales than it has anything to do about them. Peter, Chris, stay out of it. Stay retired. Don't touch it with the 10-foot pole. Original Kiss fans respect you. And Ace, you've been treated, even to this day, like crap.
Yeah, like go back to that Howard Stern interview where Paul Stanley was asked, "Hey, why didn't you guys play when you guys were inducted into the Hall of Fame?" And Paul Stanley said, "Well, that's not who Kiss is. You know, what were we supposed to call the band allegedly? You know, call them Piss or something?" And Ace Frehley went off on that, saying, "Oh, look at this! I've got a laundry list of dirt that I can
I'm glad he
unveil on
didn't.
Paul
I'm glad.
Stanley."
I think personally, someone talked to Ace and told him not to do anything, not to say anything. Like I
But
said,
the thing,
Ace has been nice. He even had Paul on his Origins.
hmm
You know, what can you say? That was nice. Look,
yeah,
they bust on Ace all they want, but Ace has a solo career. He has gold albums on his solo career.
real
Besides,
quick, real quick, I want to just cut you off there. We have someone in the chat saying something here, saying agreed to what you said about how Peter and Ace need to stay away. And then Chad Ti says, "It's funny how so many of us fans feel the same way about liking Tommy and Eric, but not liking the makeup."
yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the second part too, that made a, I feel, a biggest blunder. Had they put Eric and Tommy in their own makeup, they would have sold a lot more memorabilia than what they did.
And he says, Ace's ex girlfriend made some wild claims, and they never
See,
went after her
you,
for
you
it.
have to remember some of these people when they get cut off from the money train. Uh, Chad, there's the one, that guy G. Gordon. He did that Kiss and Tell. The man, if you ever listen to him, wants to sound like he's a rock star and popular, and he's not. But he puts down Ace after Ace. You always have a tag along. There's always a tag along, and they're not really there because who you are, but who you are popular wise. And that G. Gordon guy is one of he's a loser. I don't personally like him. I wasn't going to bring him up, but unfortunately I did. But Ace's girlfriend, she was all fine doing the things that she wanted to do, but after Ace, so I'm going to unload. Yeah.
Hmm. Also, real quick to Chad, who, by the way, says Paul argues that you need that specific makeup. That's BS. They could sell new characters. I love the Vinny Eric makeup.
Yeah, like I
But
said, old Kiss fans that grew up with Vinny and Eric at the time in makeup, that never was a problem. The reason why there was any problem with the fandom with Kiss was because of Dynasty, Unmasked, and The Elder. Had nothing to do with the fact that Eric Carr was in makeup and Vinny was in makeup.
I
Had
think Paul
nothing to do.
Stanley just says that because he doesn't want to admit that switching genres so radically with Dynasty, with Unmasked, and especially with The Elder, he doesn't want to admit he's wrong.
No, and he never will. And here's the thing. I say the reason he has not Vinny, excuse me, Ace and Eric Singer in Peter and Ace's makeup, it's a mind trick. When he sees Tommy, he's not seeing Tommy. He's seeing Ace. And when he's looking back and seeing Eric Singer, he's not seeing Eric Singer. He's seeing Peter Chris. But the difference is they're yes man. They're not Ace and Peter. Even when they were hired hands, you're not going to be telling them, They're going to tell you, them two, they're definitely going to tell you they don't like something. So, but this is the band they quote unquote, this version is the four that they like, that they think this is Kiss, and that's fine and dandy. But what I disagree with is how they execute things. The way they treat Eric and Tommy, they didn't treat Bruce Kulick and Eric Carr the same way. There's interviews, they weren't even there. And even when they were there, they're just sitting there. Purposely, Gene and Paul are the only ones allowed to talk. When you have them now, oh, Eric can talk, Tommy can talk. But back then, that wasn't the case. You can go watch Kiss Exposed, and what do you have? Bruce Kulick and Eric Carr only say two words on that whole entire hour video. Yeah, I mean, you know, even today, they used to have this saying. Paul Stanley used to have this saying back in the day. If I sell a 4 million record, I sell 4 million, and that's good. But if the next album, I only sell 500,000, then I just turned off 3.5 Kiss fans, million Kiss fans. Okay, so that kind of kept him in check. Now his saying is, if you don't like how Kiss is doing or what Kiss has done, thank you for your time and your effort, but goodbye. Well, you already took your money, so they ain't giving it back.
Chad says, I was an active fan during that period. I'm a geriatric husk man. Everyone bailed at Dynasty. The other two, no one even knew about. I was just about to mention Exposed, and Bruce is like, edit her out, is all he got.
Yeah.
By the way, Chad, real quick, before we go any further, I don't believe I've seen you. I know you're in Phil's chat right now, but I don't believe I've seen you around here before. So make sure, if you're not already, that you are subscribed, not just to Release McCracken, but also to Fandomology, which is my channel, because we do stuff like this all the time. And it's not just bands we talk about. We talk about other things like movies, TV shows. I do plenty of gaming streams. If you like watching someone rage at Mario Kart or other things, hard mode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of that.
So let's go to the next album.
Well, hold on. We got so deep into that rabbit trail, we didn't even talk about the actual final product of Alive Symphony and Alive Millennium.
Well, Alive Sympathy, there's not much to say. It's just a Kiss live that is done with the sympathy. Not like any other band that's done it. Again, Kiss borrowing from other people's playbooks. Was it good? Yes. Did I like it? Yes. But, again, it's almost another live album, just the difference is sympathy.
Right. And then Alive Millennium is the last live album.
Oh, we forgot to mention
feature...
before we did Millennium, Rock and Roll Radio.
I have that after the two live albums. But Millennium, as I said, is the last live album to actually feature all four members. Now, the question I have, Phil, and this is only taking into account the final product of each of these albums, which one do you think is the superior live album? Obviously, neither of them are Alive or Alive 2, but between Millennium and Symphony, which one do you think is better?
Millennium, because it has the original band, and to hear Ace and Peter play songs they didn't play on, like Heaven's on Fire, Lick It Up, I Love It Loud. That was good to hear. Now, I know they do some songs on Sympathy that Peter didn't play on, but for me, it was a bigger deal having the four original members on that. And yeah. So I would lean more to Millennium than Sympathy, but Like I said,
I would tend to agree. I mean, hearing the full orchestra backing on songs like God of Thunder, Black Diamond especially, and Rock and Roll All Night, that was cool, but I just tend to prefer Millennium more just cuz well, for one, I think Peter Criss sings Black Diamond better than Eric Singer, and hearing Ace sing 2000 Man put like my favorite track off of Millennium is probably Ace singing 2000 Man out of all of them. That almost by itself wins it out over Symphony. And um, let's see, Chad says some stuff here. He says, first off, Symphony was unnecessary.
Yep.
He said Rock and Roll Radio was on a live version, on a version of the live Millennium for a minute, not on it anymore. Now you can't get Rock and Roll Radio on any KISS release.
Okay, rock and Roll Radio, when after it was put on that special for the Ramones, there was a special release of Sympathy that was cut down. Okay, the album, the difference in the covers is how you tell. The total release one is black. The partial release one is blue. And one of the tracks on there is Rock and Roll Radio. It's on the partial cut down with the blue cover. It's the same cover, just the background is the one is black. That's a full cover. It's the blue cover that has Rock and Roll Radio. And the reason KISS did that was because they bigger KISS fans, which big KISS fans are different than the other fans in the world. Because it had that one track, we want that album. So that's the album people. So you got it. You know, as a KISS fan, you end up having to buy the album, the full Sympathy that doesn't have Rock and Roll Radio track. Then you had to end up buying the partial one because the only reason you wanted it was because of Rock and Roll Radio. And maybe you didn't want to buy the tribute to Ramones for the one KISS song. You see what I'm saying? KISS is good at doing stuff like that. So I have both versions, the blue cover and the black cover. So and the blue cover is the one, like I said, it's a partial cut down, and it had the Rock and Roll Radio. That was the only reason people were buying the blue cover, was so they can get that version of the song.
Right, which, by the way, I didn't get to highlight this earlier. Chad said that he bought the blue cover too. He also said, I could talk about KISS all day. Very love-hate, especially now. And I think that's kind of a good transition to go into the final three albums, which are the only three studio albums to feature the current lineup of Gene, Paul,
before
Eric
we go
Singer,
there,
and
the
Tommy
reason
Thayer.
why we're not going into other albums, because majority of the other albums that are released at this time are purely what you would call greatest hits albums. And it makes no point, because between You Wanted the Best and today, there's like about, like I said, 9 albums. They're nothing but greatest hits albums. At that point, as a diehard KISS fan, that disheartened me, because I'm not going to keep buying greatest hits albums just with a different name. There's KISS Gold, KISS Millennium 1, KISS Millennium 2, KISS Millennium 3. Yeah. The only one we're bringing up is because they totally recorded the songs with the current lineup on old songs, and that's KISS Classics.
Yes, which, kind of going into that, you mentioned in prep for this next album, Sonic Boom, that Sonic Boom was initially a double release with KISS Classics, but KISS Classics at first was just in Japan.
Yep, and it had a different album cover than that. I think you have the album cover. Yeah.
Yeah, right
that
there.
was released in Japan, and it had 15 songs. Like I said, it's different than like Smashes and Trashes. Smashes and Trashes has KISS songs on it, like Dr. Love and all that, but they are remastered. These are new recordings. That means there's not Bruce, Tommy Thayer, Eric Singer, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons playing on every single track, redone with them. It doesn't have no Peter Criss, no Ace Frehley, even though they're like Dr. Love is from the original band, but they're the ones doing it. Makes it different. Makes it different. So
Real quick, I do want to bring up something interesting that Chad just said here. He said that he saw them on the Sonic Boom show, that he liked the album, but it was on that tour that he noticed that Paul's voice was going.
yeah. Uh yeah, Sonic Boom is where you can tell on the live tour that I didn't this after the reunion tour, I mean, and Psycho Circus, I was done. I was done. I didn't go for the farewell tour because I was already disheartened, and it had nothing to do about Ace and Peter. It had everything to do about Gene and Paul running Kiss. And then what I figured was this wasn't going to be the end because we knew Kiss wasn't going to end there. So I have never seen the current version of Kiss live. I don't see no point in it for me. For me, Kiss should have ended on the farewell tour. But Kiss went on. I did collect the music, but it's more out of habit than out of passion.
Right.
For me, for having every Kiss album, there's no sense not having Sonic Boom with Kiss Classics and not having Monster. It had no point. So I did get them. Sonic Boom. Let's talk Sonic Boom and then we'll do classics.
Yeah, so Sonic Boom, I'll go ahead and give my score for it. What did I tell you earlier? Sonic Boom, I give actually a 7 out of 10. I think it's a great album, and I think that Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer, say what you want about them pretending to be the cat and the spaceman, respectively, but just as pure musicians, they really do come into. They basically slot right into the roles that they were put into, and they make it work. Real quick, Chad, kind of going back to what we said. Oh wow, Psycho Circus and Phantom Menace was a 1-2 punch that almost killed me at the time. We all hated Psycho Circus not for what it was, but for what it should have been. And I'm gonna guess,
as I
Chad.
told you before, Paul, a diehard Kiss fan will tell you at the time when it came out, we were excited for that album because it was supposed to be the original band. And then years later, finding out what happened to it and why it was mostly not the original band playing on it, it was a failure. Unlike Creatures of the Night, which you could say for that it was a success.
Mm-hmm.
But if you notice them, if you can put the Sonic Boom album cover back up there.
Yeah.
The Sonic Boom album cover is almost identical to the Rock and Roll Over. And what they were trying to do was they had the same artist that did Rock and Roll Over do this album cover. Sonic Boom for me is a good album for what it is. I'm glad they put a song for Eric to sing and Tommy to sing. I would be
Yeah.
more inclined them singing them live than singing their copying of Ace and Peter.
Yeah, what business does Tommy Thayer have singing "Shock Me" when the whole point of that song was to write a song loosely based off an actual event that happened to Ace that nearly killed him?
At least he's not singing 2000 Man in New York Groove. Shock me,
True.
even though I don't want him singing that song. Well, let me put you this way. Let's just hit the nail on the head. Eric Singer is not trying to play drums like Peter Criss. First of
No.
all, Peter Criss is a jazz style drummer, and he's one uh, bass drum. Eric Singer did play one bass when he with that portion of the band with Ace Frehley when he was part of it. But after that, when he came back for the third and final time, he's back to double bass. Tommy Thayer is copying Ace, not just playing, not just image. I've showed you 4 live videos of
Yeah,
Benny Vincent playing Shout It Out Loud,
yeah.
Bruce
It's
Kulick playing Shout It Out Loud,
shout it out loud. You
and
gotta
Ace.
have a party,
Yeah,
shout it,
there's a part
shout
there
it.
where Gene and Paul, when the song slows down and Shout It Out Loud, they each say a lyric. Then
Mhm.
Ace would say, "Come on, everybody, shout it out now."
Vinny
That
never did
part
it.
was never done by Bruce Kulick, Vinnie Vincent at all. At all at a live performance. You never hear it. If you can watch it on YouTube, never hear it. Ace brought it every time when he's with Kiss. That's the part he sings.
Yep.
Tommy Thayer on a live performance of Shout It Out Now will copy and say, "Come on, everybody, shout it out now."
And his voice
That's a
sounds so
slap in the
different.
face.
You can tell that it's him.
Now, I'm not sure if that's his idea. More than likely, Gene and Paul's idea. Look, nobody's saying it's perfect, but Tommy Thayer is going to do what he's told and get a paycheck. I can understand the paycheck, but he can't do what he just did a couple months ago and say, "I'm afraid that people, when they refer to my time in Kiss as a member of Kiss and as a guitarist of Kiss, I'm not going to be recognized for me." Of course not, because everything you do is copying of Ace. Bruce Kulick did
Mhm.
not attempt to play like Ace. Vinnie Vincent didn't try to play like Ace. So they have respect. They were them.
And Eric Carr for sure did not try and play like Peter
No,
Criss.
no. And that's why, when you see Kiss from the original band all the way to 79, when you see the unmasked portion of Kiss with Gene, Paul, Bruce, and Eric, people
Ace and
loved
Eric,
it
you mean?
because their shows was original. There was no fakeness involved. No one trying to impersonate somebody else. You get to this version of Kiss. Yes, it's going to not only piss off a diehard original band fan, this is going to piss off a lot of Kiss fans overall. Now, there's some group of people, and they're on YouTube, that will say, "Oh, this is great. This is wonderful. This is Kiss keep going. This is Kiss's greatness." Look, you got them even for Disney with Star Wars. Look, a diehard Kiss fan will tell you they have no problems with Bruce Kulick playing any Ace's songs with not singing them. I'm talking about playing them and his style playing it. They don't care if he changed it up and made it sound like him. What they would have been pissed off is if he tried to sound like Ace.
Or say, for example, a certain female character that we would have had no problem with had she not stolen everything, and I mean everything from
But
Luke
look at this
Skywalker.
way. Ace really ends up doing on the farewell tour, playing some songs he never played. He never played Lick It Up before, Heaven's on Fire. Uh, so hearing him play it is really cool, but you don't see Ace trying to play Lick It Up like Vinnie Vincent. He's playing it
Frankly, I
like
don't think he
Peter,
could.
you know. So yeah, that's our argument. I mean, when you get to this point of Kiss, you wish that Gene and Paul treated the previous members of Kiss the way they treat Eric and Tommy. It would have been great to see him treat Bruce and Eric Carr that way in the 80s. They didn't.
Mhm.
They didn't. So, when like somebody today that grew up in Kiss, let's say from 2000 to now, they don't know the unmasked version of Kiss. They don't know the original band of Kiss. To them, seeing Tommy there, oh, it is Kiss. But for somebody like Ming and Chad here, seeing Tommy Thayer, we're just we're seeing somebody. I hate to call it a tribute band. They're half a tribute band, you
Hmm.
know.
And real quick, Chad says, imagine if when David Lee Roth left Van Halen, they dressed Sammy Hagar up like Dave and called him the Ice Cream Man. It's silly.
You know. And like I said, there are some diehard Kiss fans that would be against what me and Chad are saying, and Kiss can do no wrong. Look, Kiss is good at smoke and mirrors, and if we catch them on something 10 years ago, Kiss will turn it around and make it seem like, okay, we didn't say that. When you clearly can look at videos and information, they did say that. Uh, Today they can get away with it. If this was 1989, they couldn't get away with this, what they're doing now. They couldn't get away with it. Kiss fans would have
Yeah.
revolted. It would have ended their career.
But
So,
anyways, again, kind of bringing it back to real quick, Chad says, if Eric and Tommy were complete unknowns, it might even be a little better.
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Tommy was in a Kiss tribute act,
Cold
and I
Gin.
yeah,
That's what the band called. It was called Cold Gin.
and if I'm not
And
mistaken, that's how Paul and Gene found him.
no, 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 no. Tommy Thayer was in a band called Black and Blue. Gene Simmons was produced a couple of their albums and was their manager in the mid '80s. And they were on tour in 1985 during the Asylum tour. Black and Blue was the opening act. That's where Tommy Thayer came from. By '88, the band had folded, and he joined Kiss as pretty much an errand boy. And he went from an errand boy to writing some songs for Kiss, and then became a tour manager. He wasn't the manager; he was a tour manager, which means uh, when they went into, like, say, St. Louis, his job was to make sure they had food delivered, whatever clothes they were supposed to wear, uh, everything that had to do with the tour up into that city was ready.
Mhm.
So, and then after that tour was done in St. Louis, he then had to prepare for the next city. So he was a tour manager. Yep. So yeah, and then he eventually start playing ghost guitar like he did on Psycho Circus, and then yeah. So they had a couple years of knowing who he was, but he was basically the tour manager.
Okay.
So
So, but anyways, though, back to Sonic Boom. Overall, I give it a 7 out of 10. And best track, I'm gonna honestly, I can't choose one. I think they're all just pretty good, in my opinion.
it wasn't what they advertised. They promised an album that was going to be sounding like a '70s album. Well,
I
it
mean, it
didn't sound like
kind of did.
it probably there, in some form and fashion, but to me, it was just a normal album. I don't think they should have been even attempting to sound like the '70s Kiss. They're not '70s Kiss, but I would say yeah is probably my favorite song on there. Though I will admit, I do like Tommy Thayer's song, "Lightning Strikes." I
Actually,
do
yeah,
like that
I'm
song.
gonna choose that one as my favorite.
Yeah,
Lightning
but I
Strikes.
will say this: I would have preferred him singing that song live than singing "Shock Me." You know,
Mhm.
they had yeah. Leave Ace's stuff alone. You have your
Yeah.
own stuff now. So
Meanwhile, released along with this album, we already showed it, Kiss Classics. So this is re-recordings of
not
old Kiss
re-recording.
albums.
It's new recordings. New recordings. There's a difference. Remastered
I didn't say
remixes
remaster.
are the original track from previous albums. This album is totally done. All the songs are totally done by the current lineup. There's no remaster, no remixing. These are the new version of the songs done by the current lineup.
That's what I mean when I say re-recording.
No, because when you say re-recording, people presume that they've been touched up of the old recordings. It's just best to say new recordings of old material.
We can argue semantics later. But anyways, for me, I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. And for me, the best track on it is actually no, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I'll be honest, I was close to giving this an outright 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, but I couldn't do that in good conscience because A, it's Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer, and B, I do still believe, having now listened to the entire of Kiss catalog, I do still believe that, at least for me, my favorite Kiss album of all time is the first one. So I can't, and if I remember correctly, I only gave that album an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I'm going 8.5 out of 10 for this one. And best track for me is the redo of Black Diamond.
I will agree on the song. I do like the idea that they did re-recordings with the current lineup. I wish Smashes and Trashes had been done that way, even though Smashes and Trashes went double platinum.
Yeah.
Uh, Sonic Boom studio album didn't go platinum, didn't even go gold. Didn't It did sell well for the time of what we're in today, but even though that had two different albums on the same album label,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't even go gold. It did not
Right.
go gold. And I was happy to get Kiss Classics because originally I was going to spend a lot more money to get the Japanese version, but since they were adding it as a freebie with the Sonic Boom, saved me the money. So yeah, uh, the only reason I would say this album's worth buying is because you got the classic album with Sonic Boom.
Yeah. By the way, Chad, just as a random question, I'm curious what your thoughts on the album Kiss My A Word was, because that is funny enough, in my prep for doing these streams, that is like the one album that I just could not finish. I hated it that much. So I'm curious what your thoughts on that album is, Chad. And while you're answering that, we'll go ahead and move on to the final album, Monster. Now, Chad earlier in the chat said that, at least to him, Monster was more consistent. And I do have to ever so slightly, well, I do agree with that. And he says that Kiss My A Word was boring. And he's also poking fun at the Ace makeup here.
It's not Ace makeup. They weren't allowed to use Ace's makeup, so they had to put Paul Stanley's Bandit makeup on because Ace owned the rights. And technically,
I think he's talking about the monster makeup that's
no,
Tommy
no, no,
Thayer
no.
wearing.
He's talking about the Ace makeup on
Oh.
Kiss, on that album. Yeah, yeah. But Monster. This is the last studio album, and apparently will be the last Kiss album because they're ending in December. Kiss has no desire to do albums anymore because in today's market, albums don't sell. So what does sell? Live
Tours.
tours. So pretty much most of your rock bands now are just plain tours. Some bands still don't care if they put an album out if it goes gold or not. What they're just concerned about is touring, and Kiss is at that stage. So it's kind of sad there isn't more studio albums. Uh, Sad to see Monster as the final album, studio album. It's not bad. Again, it's a follow up to Sonic Boom, so it is a little bit built upon what the previous one was. Uh, no complaints. It's a Kiss album. It's good. Didn't go gold. Another album didn't go gold. But then again, in today's market, you're not getting golds. Uh, but I will say between the two albums of Sonic Boom and Monster, Monster is the better album. But for me, what pushes Sonic Boom over Monster is again because they threw in Kiss Classics with that. With Monster, you just got this studio album standing on its own. It's good. Once again, both Eric and Tommy get to sing a song each.
Mm-hmm.
I find it ironic that them two were able to get songs easily on the album to sing and perform, where, like, in the 80s, Eric Carr had to fight 8 years to get a single song to sing of his own, and he didn't get it to the very end until Hot and Shade. Bruce Kulick didn't get a song to sing until he did his what would be his final album, Carnival of Souls. So you see
Right.
treatment done there. You know, you
Which
see.
real quick, I want to highlight what Chad said here. He said that he saw them on the Monster tour twice, and they sounded good, but Paul struggled. And I would imagine, Chad, also that um, this is around the time that they downtuned their guitars to accommodate Paul's aging voice, because especially in this pretty much the 70s albums and the late 80s early 90s albums, I know from listening that they were playing in E flat standard tuning. They briefly moved up to E standard for albums like The Elder, Creatures of the Night, Lick It Up, and all that. Then they brought it back down to E flat standard, and now they're playing in D standard to accommodate Paul's voice. And I'm willing to bet that's when they do it. Oh, and Chad says that there was more Gene songs then,
Well,
because Gene's voice aged, well, hasn't gone as much as Paul's has, although you can tell he's
I
losing
mean,
his
when
too.
you see him live, you can tell Paul's voice is struggling and is gone. By this time, it's gone. That's why you have
Mhm.
the uh, backing tracks on live performances. As far as studio albums, there's always ways to fix that, and with modern
Right.
technology.
But
I mean,
but the thing is, in listening, and I listened, by the way, to both of these albums today. I listened to Sonic Boom while I was in the gym. I listened to Monster over my lunch break at work, and I could and he, in the studio
well,
you have, your auto tune and
yes,
such
but
like
see,
that.
there's
I could
something.
I could hear it.
There's a reason why Sonic Boom and Monster sound the way they do, and why it's different than Psycho Circus and say Revenge.
Hmm.
Psycho Circus and Revenge was recording on digital. Kiss on these two albums, Sonic Boom and Monster, that's not they purposely went back to analog. So that's why Paul's voice sounds differently on them two albums compared to Psycho Circus and say Carnival of Souls. You're going they went backward.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I heard some auto correction in there.
no,
I
no,
heard
no.
some auto tune.
They're that them. Hate defending modern Kiss, but you're going from digital. Psycho Circus is recording on a digital track. Them two albums, they did record analog. And when you're recording analog to digital, it's like night to day. Everything is different. Digital is easier to fix. Analog, you're getting what you get. And on analog, it isn't okay. We're starting the song. First 2 minutes sound great. Stop. Let's go to the second take of it and then plug that in. No. When you're doing analog, you're doing 5 or 6 takes entirely, and you're picking the best one out of them 6 tracks as the song. There's no editing, there's no redoing, no patching up on analog. You can't. You'll hear the popping sounds and all this other stuff. You can't do it. That's why they went to analog. So when you hear analog, the difference is you're hearing the song being played start to finish. And they might have done 15 takes of that song and they picked the best one. Again, they didn't do like on digital where you can go in there and say, oh, these first 2 minutes of this take was good, the middle of this two was good, and then we'll get the end from this other one down here, and you can patch them together and you got the song. Perfect. Splicing, there you go. Thank you, Chad. Analog, you can't do that. You got to play through the whole entire song. And that's what they did, and they purposely did it that way. So I'll give them credit on that. So, like for example, if there's a part of the song where maybe Paul's voice on digital was a little bit low, they can go in there and take another version of the song and spice that in there, so it isn't low. Where on analog, if it happens to be low, but that's the best sounding, they're stuck with it. That's it. That's good. Whatever it is, that's it. Done. That's
Okay.
the difference between analog and digital.
Well, getting back to the album itself, Monster, I rank this one also 7 out of 10, same as I do Sonic Boom. And I'd say the first track, Hell or Hallelujah, is probably my pick for best track.
For me, I like all the songs. I ain't saying they're gems or stars. I just think they're good songs, but nothing memorable. I mean, if I was to put a greatest hits album out today, I doubt if I'm going to add anything from Sonic Boom or uh, Monster, though they probably would throw a track in there from each. But for me, songs are good, just not great. Just not great. Uh,
Yeah.
and it isn't like Creatures of the Night. There ain't nothing here that not belittling it. I give them credit. There's no outside ghost musicians. There's no outside writers on these 2 albums. This is pure Kiss. Kiss alone. I wish they would have done this back in the 80s, but it is what it is now, and I can take it. Like I said, the only reason I have Sonic Boom and Monster is because I am a Kiss fan and I have every Kiss album. Uh, it doesn't make any sense not to have these two. But if I wasn't a diehard Kiss fan, I wouldn't see getting a Sonic Boom or Monster. A casual fan, I could say you can probably get away with Sonic Boom because it has the Kiss classics. You can skip Monster. But that's not saying it's a bad album. It's not. Look,
I
if this was done in the 90s, both these 2 albums would probably have gone gold. But because of the times we're living in and when these albums were released, and I believe Monster is 2012 and Sonic
yes.
Boom is 2009, you know, as early as that time is, and it's been about 10, 15, 20 years, let's say, the music industry has changed. You're not going to make and break it by an album like you did in the 80s and 90s and the 70s. You're not going to get it that way. What you're going to get it and make it big is live performances. That's why you see these bands, they're too old to be playing. They're even doing backtracks. People are willing to spend money because they want to see Motley Crue. They want to see Wasp. They want to see Kiss. And they know in the next maybe 10 years, they're not going to be there. I mean,
Yes.
Alice Cooper got only so much more he can go. Kiss is calling it quits. Motley Crue, my saying, should call it quits. You know, Wasp had done call it quits. You know, are they pushing it? Yes. Are they really performing? No, they're only pretty much what they're doing is what they used to do in the video. Play along to the song. They're not really even playing it. They're just faking it. Now they're doing it live, which is sad. I am not going to spend $80 to what is it, 200 some dollars to go to a live performance to see a band play to a recording. If they would have done that in the 80s, they would have got killed off stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the whole purpose of going to see a live performance. You want to see the band play live. You don't care if a guitar drops out of tune. You don't care if there's back feed coming from an amp. You're there to see a live performance. I don't want to hear. If I wanted to see a video, which is pretty much they're doing a live video, if I want to see a live video, I'll watch the video. You know, to me, to go to a live performance to see Kiss today isn't worth $10. The only reason you would go to, and I will tell you the real reason why there's a lot of people going to Kiss show, because they're taking their children to go see Kiss before they don't get to see them no more. At least they can say they saw Kiss live, okay? But if they're not really seeing Kiss live, you know, you heard me tell you the people back in the day would complain about Kiss in the late '80s. They were playing too fast. Well, the reason they were playing too fast, they were doing 20 to 25 songs, and if they weren't all done by a certain time, then Kiss would have to pay a fine for every time they go over. So Black Diamond, which takes 6 to 7 minutes to play originally, they had to do it in under 4 minutes because they have 25 other songs to sing.
Which is where that one clip that I sent you from 1984 comes from,
Yeah.
where I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Because that's what they are talking about. Why? But then again, you're getting 20 to 25 songs a show. Now you're getting 20 to 25 songs to backtrack. Ask me this. It would be cheaper for you to buy a greatest hits Kiss album and than it is to spend $200 to go see him live, pretty much performing the same way to that track to them album. Right? It don't make no sense. I was glad to see Kiss live when I saw Kiss live. And when I say live, I mean live. No background tracks, no Paul Stanley's voice. You know, I here's the thing. I give David Coverdale of Whitesnake every credit in the world. His voice is not what it used to be. But when he goes out there and sings with Whitesnake, there's no backtracks. He's singing. So sometimes in some songs, his voice tends to give out. Well, granted, he's 70 some years old. So I wouldn't have a problem Paul singing a song lower key, lower tempo, or even him singing a song and it ends up his voice weakens during the song. I can cut him that slack. I'm not going to cut him some slack to him singing to a background track. No, that's just a ripoff.
Yeah.
So
now, I do want to, real quick with Monster. You did make a comment that I am going to disagree with about how a casual Kiss fan should skip this album. I'm going to disagree with that because you also said earlier that this is for sure the last Kiss album. And I think the fact that this is the last Kiss album, that alone, whether you're diehard or casual, makes this album worth buying because there's not going to be another new Kiss album coming down the pipeline.
Studio. They might have something like like an Alive 5, maybe. But as far as studio, we're not getting another studio album.
Yeah, so the fact, like I said, that alone makes
I will tell you this. If a casual fan of Kiss mostly might have 2 or 3 Kiss albums. They might have Destroyer. They might have Smashes, Trashes, and Hits. maybe Revenge. That's it. You might have them three if you're a casual Kiss fan.
Mhm.
I won't say to say a casual Kiss fan will say, "Oh, I need to have Monster." The only people that would say they would Monster or Sonic Boom and they're casual Kiss fan is if they're younger in their early 20s and this is the version of the band they grew up on.
Mhm.
But if you're talking to a person that grew up in the 70s and might only have 4 albums, they probably have Destroyer. They probably have Animalize. They might have Creatures of the Night. They might have Revenge. Maybe Alive and Alive 2. But, at most, a casual Kiss fan isn't going to have, they're not going to buy Carnival of Souls for sure. They're not going to buy The Elder. You know,
Heck no.
no. So I would not, I'm not saying these 2 albums are bad. They're good. But as far as like Kiss catalog with everything, these are you know what are they? 22 studio albums.
Mhm.
I would pick up Carnival of Souls before I pick up Sonic Boom and uh, Monster. And the only reason I'm picking up Carnival of Souls is more collectors than Sonic Boom or Monster. You know, I can't compare album sales since we don't have an album sales for what Carnival of Souls did. But comparing them to three, all three, none of them went gold. None of them went gold. Look, when you're looking to buy an album, most of the time people buy because one song they heard is great, so they buy the album. Okay? Maybe they might heard 2 good songs off that album. All right? 9 times out of 10, you're not buying the album unless you're a diehard fan or close to being a semi diehard fan, and you have to have everything a band does. If Metallica came out with the greatest hits album, more fans of Metallica would buy the greatest hits album than they would buy, mm, let me see, Anger. You know, just a fact. You might own, as a Metallica fan, and I'm not saying diehard, I'm talking casual fan. You might have Ride the Lightning, you might have Injustice for All, and you might have the Black Album. Them three are the 3 albums that most of them might have at least 1 or 2. But to say they have,
You also
and,
forgot Master of Puppets.
there's more people for them 3 that I mentioned there is Master of Puppets. I like Master of Puppets. I like Kill 'Em All, Master of Puppets more than I like them other 3. But I won't say I'm a diehard or even a. I would say I'm more a casual Metallica fan, because I was more Megadeth. But if you go into somebody's record collection, I guarantee you're more likely coming across a Kill 'Em All more than any of them, and that didn't sell as great according to the market. But as far as fandom wise, which is the better album? Yep. And that's just a comparison. Like I said, most of these Kiss is the exception to the rule. Kiss has more diehards than any other band. I mean, how many Aerosmith fans can you say are diehard Aerosmith fans and have every single album?
I
Not
have no
many.
clue because
But you
I
may
know
have,
nothing about Aerosmith
yeah,
other
well,
than
I'm just using it as a
Dream On.
comparison. But then you might have a person that has Aerosmith albums, they might have 3 of their albums. Kiss is where you get the exception. You have more diehards. Not only do they have to have the American release, but you have to have the Japanese release. The same thing, like I discussed with Sympathy. There's the black and there's the blue. The only difference is the black has the full concert, the blue has a partial one. But the only reason Kiss fans were buying that blue one was because of the studio track of Rock and Roll Radio. Metallica couldn't do that. Fans would revolt against them. But Kiss knows that their fans will do that. They will buy it just for that one track. You know, have a good day, Chad, and thanks for stopping by. It's
Yeah, no,
always nice to
we're
meet another diehard Kiss fan.
absolutely.
So,
And I
but
think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up
yeah,
now, anyways.
yep. Well, like I said, Kiss is the enigma. Like I said, we'll eventually start talking about other bands, uh, like
I
we did
don't
with
think
Black
we're.
Sabbath.
Yeah,
But
I. It'll be interesting. Like I said at the beginning, I going into this, I had heard you talking to me about like the backstage drama involving Kiss. You had already told me about the things with Eric Carr and all that stuff. And that's what inspired me to go dive into their catalog to begin with. And despite all of the atrocious things that we've talked about regarding Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons as people, you cannot deny that at the end of the day, they are good musicians and businessmen unlike anything you could conceive. And I am glad that I have gotten into Kiss. And for those wondering, our next band that we're going to be getting into after we have I don't know how long of a break, our next band we're going to get into is Deep Purple. So I'm looking forward to that. And as far as on my channel, Fandomology goes, um, tomorrow would have been Animation Friday, but I got talking with Crit, and we're gonna go ahead and bring back the Godzilla streams. So I got to get with him tomorrow, find out which Godzilla we're talking about. Phil, anything you want to plug for your channel?
um, I'm going to take a break for a couple of weeks. I'll probably be back in 2 or 3 weeks. Um, have some things coming down the road, but I'll wait and see if they come to being. And no, Matt Risman will never talk about John Denver, but we will talk about what is that lotion you use to make yourself so shiny. I mean, sometimes when I see you live on YouTube, you're just extreme. It isn't more just your aura; it's whatever you're using to make you you're almost divine glow. I want to call it. So,
Yes.
and Matt Risman, when are you going to sign Alan Copeland? Alan Copeland. When is he? You need to snag him so you can start charging people for his services. You know, you know. RBN needs to grow, my friend. It needs to grow. So, but anyway, it was good to talk about Kiss. Uh, like I said, the, the third part of this with Kiss is awful hard as an original fan of the original band, and even as a fan of the unmasked version. Uh, this version of Kiss with Tommy and this Eric isn't bad. I just wish that had they created their own makeup, you wouldn't have an issue with the original band. That way, if anything was to happen on stage and you wanted to bring Peter and Ace in makeup, there wouldn't be a conflict. And
Yeah.
I hope to God I never see two spacemans or two catmans on the same stage. Oh no, no, that would be no, no.
Now, one last question to talk about, and we've had this conversation in private, Phil, but I do think we should at least briefly touch on this before we go. What happens that fateful day that we all know is coming? What happens to Kiss when I should either Gene or Paul pass away?
Oh, I don't know what they would do with that. One or the other. But I do know the big question is a little bit bigger than that. Is after this Kiss so-called tour ends and Kiss comes to the end, will Kiss come to an end? And I can tell you this right up front. No. I don't think that Gene and Paul will be back. There's a possibility Eric and Tommy will, and then what you would probably call Kiss 2, you know, where two people will replace Gene and Paul, but Kiss is still controlled by Gene and Paul. So I mean, there's a lot of rumors on YouTube. You hear, uh, what's his name from the singer of Striper? Somebody
Michael
has said
Sweet,
that he might be a candidate to replace Paul Stanley.
which I've already said I don't see that happening because he's too committed with Striper.
Well, like I said, do not know. I'm only saying what's out there and what they say. Uh, I don't want to see a Kiss too. There's a lot of tribute bands already out there for Kiss. We don't need an quote unquote official band. Uh, I would be more happier if they would leave it to the tribute bands and Kiss hangs it up. I do see them doing stuff like maybe in a live five with this part of the so-called farewell tour. Do you see them releasing maybe more songs that are not been officially released? I see a Kissology number 4 coming. We didn't talk about Kissology, and that's the DVDs. 1, 2, and 3 have been out, and each of them sold 5 million each, and that's not a bad thing for having 5 million considered platinum sales of a DVD. So I would suspect not a rockology, Kissology 4 coming out after maybe not next year, but the year after. So, and probably will be flooded like Elvis with more greatest hits, even though Kiss has too many as it is. But that's the record company, Record companies when band stops, that doesn't mean they stop putting out their music, you know. So I doubt we'll see Paul and Gene do any solo tours. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You have to remember these guys are in their 70s, and they're barely able to do. Well, Gene can do it, but Paul can't do it no more. His voice is gone. Uh, so I don't see him doing any solo tours. Uh, Gene maybe. Gene maybe might be able to do a tours here and there, but he's got to get used to, just like Ace did. You're not going to be headlining. You're going to be opening act, or you're going to be doing it on your own, but you're going to be doing it in small venues, and that can be pretty hard on some people to go from an arena holding 20,000 to going to a small little club doing maybe a couple hundred.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, they talk bad about Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley been there, done that, and let's be honest, he does have a successful solo tour, solo career.
And
Like I
he's
said,
not using any backing tracks.
no, no. Uh, but then again, even him, he's in his 70s. So these people, it's about it's time to retire. They should take a page out of Peter Chris's book. It's time to retire. You go to a convention, you sign a couple autographs, and that's it. But as far as like the secret plan of a Kiss 2 lineup, I hope not. I really do. I really hope they don't do that. But you know, Kiss does what Kiss does. So, I mean, there was even talk, Paul, of Gene's son and Paul Stanley's son uh, doing their version of Kiss with Eric and Tommy. Again, I don't want that. Uh, they're better off doing things on their own if they do it at all. So,
Right. Well, again, I think we've gone as far into this as we can.
yep.
So, you want to hit your outro?
Yep. Well, I want to thank everybody for showing up, watching, and listening. I'm thankful. Uh, Thank you for stopping by. Uh, and just for the record, I hate you all.
Yes, I was waiting for it. And for those that are watching on my channel, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And just to prove how much Phil hates you all, Here's something that he did to me once, because I am angry, and I'm angry with this gentleman right here because he tricked me into watching a terrible movie.
I tried to warn you. I tried to help you.
We told you.
See you guys later.